The Billionaire, The Elevator, and The Secret Son. Stop. Before we dive into this electrifying drama, we need to know, where in the world are you watching us from? Drop your city in the comments. And if this story grabs you, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more real-life dramas. 2 years, 1 elevator, and a tiny bombshell. The billionaire stepped into the elevator with his fiancée, ready for a day of power meetings. They were laughing, carefree, until the doors opened on the next floor, revealing the one woman he thought he'd escaped, his ex. But the real shock was the toddler in her arms, a tiny, green-eyed boy who looked exactly like him. This is the story of a second chance that started with a silent, heart-stopping encounter. The autumn breeze in New York City barely stirred the glass of the St. Regis Hotel windows as Sarah Jenkins adjusted the small navy blazer on Leo. At 26, she had mastered the tightrope walk of motherhood and a career that had made her one of Chicago's most sought-after sustainable architects. Her warm brown eyes, framed by naturally long lashes, held the quiet determination that had brought her here. Her light brown hair, pulled back into a neat, low bun, showcased the delicate pearl earrings she'd inherited from her grandmother. "Come on, sweetie," she murmured to Leo, her voice soft but firm as she waited for the elevator. The 18-month-old played with the buttons of her simple, elegant black dress, oblivious to the adult world unfolding around him. Sarah had learned that true elegance didn't need to shout. The elevator arrived. The gold doors slid open, revealing the plush, velvet-lined interior and its occupants. Ethan Blackwood, 32, commanded the space with the magnetic presence he'd always possessed. His perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit highlighted his broad shoulders and 6'1" height. His green eyes, which once promised her the world, now met hers with an intensity that warped time. His dark hair, styled back with a touch of studied messiness, was exactly as she remembered. Beside him, Victoria Hayes exuded the effortless sophistication that only generational wealth can buy. Her champagne silk dress and inherited jewelry spoke of a world Sarah had briefly touched but never truly belonged to. She was beautiful, undeniable, with platinum blonde hair and a flawless chignon, and ice-blue eyes that now assessed Sarah with calculated curiosity. Sarah stepped into the car, holding the composure she'd perfected over the last years. Leo clung to her neck, his little fingers fiddling with her silver necklace. The boy had his father's eyes, the same striking green, the same determined jawline, the same slightly curly dark hair. The silence in the elevator was thick, heavy with unspoken history. Ethan couldn't tear his gaze away from her, from how she'd changed, how she looked even more stunning than in his most vivid memories. There was a new strength in her posture, a confidence that now enveloped her like invisible armor. Victoria felt the tension instantly. Her fingers, adorned with an engagement ring that cost more than a small apartment, tightened slightly around Ethan's arm. She was smart. She got here by reading every room. Leo chose that moment to babble something, reaching his small hands toward Ethan, with a child's pure innocence. The gesture was a silent explosion in the confined space. Ethan felt the air thin. He knew those gestures, that way of moving his hands. He'd seen them in baby pictures of himself. Floor 15. The elevator's voice broke the spell. The doors opened, but no one moved. Pause to ponder. If you were Sarah, would you have said something right then, or kept the secret for a little longer? Tell us what you think. Sarah stepped out briskly, but Ethan followed. Victoria remained inside, her eyes narrowed as the doors slowly closed. The hotel hallway, with its authentic Persian rugs and antique paintings, became the stage for a confrontation 2.5 years in the making. Sarah. Her name on his lips was raw, a mix of plea and shock she knew too well. She stopped, but didn't turn immediately. Leo played with her necklace, completely unaware of the emotional storm. When she finally faced him, Ethan saw the strength and vulnerability in her brown eyes that reminded him exactly why he had fallen for her. "How have you been?" The question sounded ridiculous even to him. 2.5 years of silence couldn't be summarized in pleasantries. "Good." The answer was clipped. Professional. Very good, in fact. Ethan took a step closer, and Sarah caught his familiar scent. A mix of bergamot and cedar that used to linger on his shirts after they spent the night together. The memory hit her like an unexpected wave. He looked at Leo, who had stopped playing and was observing the stranger with curiosity. Yes. There was no point in lying or softening the truth. "He is your son." The words shattered the space between them. Ethan felt the world tilt. He had suspected it the moment he saw the boy, but hearing it confirmed was entirely different. Leo chose that moment to babble, "Mama," and reach his little arms toward Ethan. It was as if the child felt an unexplainable connection. "Why didn't you tell me?" Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. Sarah shifted Leo, using the movement to regain her composure. "Because I didn't need you, and neither did he." The statement was a slap. Ethan remembered his last words before the breakup. "You need to decide what you really want, Sarah. I can't keep waiting for you to make space for me in your perfectly planned life." He had been proud and stubborn. She had been equally obstinate, both too young to understand that real love requires patience. "I had a right to know," he finally said. "A right?" Sarah's voice rose slightly, but she modulated it quickly. "You walked away, Ethan. You said you couldn't keep fighting for something I didn't value, because I thought you didn't love me enough, and I thought you didn't know me enough." Their eyes met. For a moment, they were 23 and 29 again, arguing in the apartment they had shared in Chicago. "You always wanted me to be more spontaneous, less career-focused, but my career was the only stable thing I had." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture Sarah remembered perfectly. "And now? Are you happy?" The question disarmed her. She had built a solid, successful life. She had projects she was passionate about, a son who adored her, and financial independence. But on the lonely nights after putting Leo to bed, when the apartment grew too quiet, she sometimes wondered if she had chosen security over love. "I am successful," she finally replied. "That's not the same." Leo grew restless, and Sarah rocked him gently. The maternal gesture stirred something deep in Ethan's chest. This was his family, a family he hadn't known, hadn't helped create. "What do you want from me, Ethan?" Her voice sounded weary. I want to know him. I want to be part of his life." He paused. "And I want us to talk." "Truly? Without pride this time?" Sarah studied his face. The years had given him maturity, but there was something else, a vulnerability she didn't recall seeing. Ethan Blackwood, the man who conquered the business world, was asking for a chance. "You're engaged," she reminded him. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. Victoria. He had completely forgotten her since seeing Sarah. "It's complicated." "Not for me." Sarah started walking toward the elevators. "When you decide what you truly want, Ethan, you know where to find me." As she waited for the elevator, Ethan watched her. She was still the most beautiful woman he had ever known. But now there was more. She was a mother, a successful professional, an unstoppable force. And he had been absent for all of it. The elevator doors opened. Sarah stepped in with Leo. Before they closed, she turned back to him. "His name is Leo Jenkins, and he's been saying Papa for 2 weeks, even if he doesn't know what it means." The doors closed, leaving Ethan alone in the hall, weighted by the decisions he now faced. The confession and the new beginning. Ethan returned to the presidential suite with heavy steps. Victoria was waiting, seated on the golden velvet sofa, an untouched martini in her perfectly manicured hands. She had changed into an ivory silk kimono, and her blonde hair fell in soft waves. At 30, she was the personification of aristocratic Spanish elegance, but her ice-blue eyes held a coldness Ethan had always chosen to ignore. So, she has a son. It wasn't a question. Victoria had inherited not just wealth, but the ability to read people like open books. Ethan loosened his tie and poured a whiskey. The Baccarat crystal reflected the New York skyline from the 24th floor. Yes. Is he yours? The pause was answer enough. Victoria sipped her martini, studying Ethan's face with the same attention she gave to evaluating an art piece. She's beautiful, she finally admitted. I can see why you fell for her. Ethan turned to her, surprised by her calm. Victoria, do you love her? The question was direct. Right now, in this moment, do you love her? Ethan closed his eyes. For 2 years, he had built a life that looked perfect on paper. Victoria was smart, sophisticated, and shared his social circle. Their families approved. The media called them New York's golden couple. But he had never felt half of what he felt for Sarah in 5 minutes in an elevator. Yes, he finally whispered. Victoria seemed to confirm what she already knew. And I never truly loved you. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was liberating. It was the first honest conversation they'd had in months. Our engagement has been convenient for both of us. You needed a wife who understood your world, and I needed the stability your success provided after my gallery hit some trouble. Ethan truly looked at her for the first time in weeks. Victoria Hayes was perfect for the society pages, but she wasn't Sarah. She had never made him laugh until his ribs hurt. She had never passionately debated sustainable architecture with him until 3 a.m. She had never looked at him as if he could move mountains. What are we going to do? He asked. Victoria rose and walked to the window. We're going to do what we should have done months ago. Admit this isn't love. She slipped off the 5-carat platinum diamond ring and placed it gently on the coffee table. The gesture was elegant, drama-free, very much her. I don't hate you, Ethan. I even care for you. But we deserve more than a union based on social convenience, and that child deserves to have his father. Ethan felt a lump in his throat. Are you sure? Completely. Victoria smiled, and for the first time in months it was genuine. Besides, there's someone at my gallery who looks at me the way you looked at that woman in the elevator. Maybe it's time we both were brave. Meanwhile, in her Chicago apartment, Sarah had just put Leo to bed. The trip to New York had been exhausting, physically and emotionally. Her apartment in the Lincoln Park neighborhood was a reflection of her personality. Clean, modern, but warm. White walls were decorated with her own architectural sketches and photos of Leo. She poured a glass of red wine and sat on her light gray sofa, scrolling through photos of Leo on her phone. In several of the profile shots, the resemblance to Ethan was undeniable. Her phone vibrated. A text from an unsaved number she immediately recognized. It's Ethan. Can we talk tomorrow? There are so many things I need to tell you, and so much more I need to know about him. Please. Sarah stared at the message for a long time. Part of her, the part that had cried for weeks after their breakup, wanted to ignore it. But the mother in her, the one who saw Leo look for father figures in every man he met, knew her son deserved a chance to know his father. She finally typed, tomorrow at 10, Coffee Central, Michigan Avenue, 30 minutes only. The reply was instant. Thank you. Sarah put down the phone and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would change everything. For better or for worse. The 30 minutes Coffee Central on Michigan Avenue buzzed with Chicago's morning energy. Sarah arrived 5 minutes early, choosing a table near the window. She wore a beige blazer over a white blouse and navy trousers. Her light brown hair was down, falling in natural waves. She had decided not to bring Leo. This first conversation needed to be just between them. Ethan arrived exactly at 10. He had swapped the formal suit for gray chinos and a light blue shirt, but he still radiated that presence that turned heads. His green eyes found her instantly, and Sarah felt that familiar jolt of her heart she had tried to bury for 2.5 years. He sat across from her unceremoniously, ordering a black coffee. Sarah already had a half-finished latte in front of her, her fingers drumming nervously against the white ceramic cup. "Thank you for coming," Ethan said, his voice deeper than she remembered. 30 minutes, Sarah reminded him, checking her watch. "I have a client meeting in the Loop afterward. Are you still designing sustainable homes?" A small smile curved Sarah's lips. "Among other things, my studio has expanded. We also work on commercial buildings and urban rehabilitation projects now." Ethan felt a mix of pride and pain. He had built an empire, but he had missed the professional growth of the woman he loved. "I always knew you'd make it." "It wasn't for you," Sarah replied calmly, but without cruelty. "It was for me. And for him." The silence stretched. Ethan drank his coffee, noticing Sarah had added 2 sugar cubes to her latte, exactly as she did when they lived together. Some habits never changed. "What is he like?" he finally asked. "Leo, what is he like?" Sarah's eyes softened immediately. "He's incredible, curious, stubborn, smart. He looks a lot like you physically, but he has my persistence." She paused. "He loves building blocks. He can spend hours stacking them and knocking them down." "Has he said his first word?" "Several. Mama, water, more. No." Sarah smiled. "Especially no. He uses it for everything." Ethan laughed, a sound Sarah hadn't heard in years. "He definitely has your stubbornness." "And yours," she countered. "He decided yesterday he didn't want to wear his shoes and stood barefoot on the hotel marble floor for 10 minutes, completely unyielding." They talked about Leo for 20 minutes, and Sarah was surprised by how natural it felt to share those small stories. Ethan listened to every detail as if it were liquid gold. "Have you ever thought about starting a new life?" The question slipped out before Ethan could stop it. Sarah tensed slightly. "And you? What happened with your fiancé?" "We broke up last night." Ethan looked directly into her eyes. "We realized we were together for the wrong reasons." "And what would the right reasons be?" "Love, real love, the kind of love that makes you unable to think of anyone else. That makes 2.5 years feel like an eternity." His voice softened. "The kind of love I feel for you." Sarah caught her breath. "Ethan, let me finish." He leaned forward. "I made enormous mistakes. I didn't understand how important your independence was. I didn't realize your ambition wasn't competition for us, but part of what made you so extraordinary. You can't just show up after 2.5 years and—" "I'm not asking to go back to where we were," Ethan interrupted gently. "I'm asking for the chance to start over, to get to know the woman you've become, to know our son, to build something real this time." Sarah looked at her watch. The 30 minutes had flown by. She stood up, taking her brown leather bag. "You can meet Leo," she finally said, "but it will be gradual, and on my terms. He is my priority, first and foremost. And don't expect this to mean anything more between us. I am a different person now, Ethan. Stronger, more independent. I don't need you to rescue me or complete my life." Ethan stood too. "I know. It's one of the things I always loved about you." Sarah started to walk away but stopped. "Saturday at 4, Millennium Park. Wear comfortable clothes. Leo likes feeding the ducks." Ethan watched her leave, his heart pounding with a hope he hadn't felt in years. A small, fragile, but real opportunity. In the taxi back to her office, Sarah closed her eyes. Ethan had changed. She could see it in the way he listened, in how he spoke of Leo. But she had changed too. She was no longer the 23-year-old girl who had lost her head over a charismatic businessman. This time, if she risked her heart, it would be for the right reasons. The first date. Saturday afternoon, Millennium Park was full of families enjoying the October sun. Ethan arrived 15 minutes early, wearing dark jeans and a white t-shirt under a brown leather jacket. He had traded his usual dress shoes for sneakers, following Sarah's instructions to the letter. He sat on a bench near the lake, mentally reviewing everything he had read about 18-month-olds for the past 3 days. At 4 o'clock, he saw Sarah approach, pushing a navy stroller. She wore light jeans and a cream sweatshirt, her hair in a high ponytail that made her look younger. But it was Leo who completely captured his attention, wearing a tiny red jacket and shoes that lit up with every step. When the boy's green eyes landed on Ethan, he showed no shyness, only pure curiosity. "Hi." Sarah stopped a few feet away, watching their interaction. Ethan rose slowly, as if a sudden movement might break the magic. "Hi, Leo." The boy clung to his mother's leg, but continued to stare at Ethan. Sarah crouched down. "Do you remember the man from the elevator? He wants to meet you." Ethan knelt down, meeting Leo's height. "Hi, champ. Your mom told me you like ducks." Leo nodded vigorously, pointing toward the water. "Ducks!" he exclaimed. "Want to feed them?" Ethan pulled out a paper bag with bread pieces. For the next 20 minutes, the three sat by the lake. Leo, initially glued to Sarah, started to venture closer to Ethan when he showed him how to throw the bread. Leo laughed every time the duck swam quickly toward the food. "More," Leo shouted, extending his hand toward Ethan when the bread ran out. "It's all gone, little one." Ethan smiled. "But look, there's a squirrel." Leo followed Ethan's pointing finger and clapped, then instinctively took Ethan's hand to lead him toward the animal. Sarah felt a lump in her throat, seeing her son's small hand confidently nestled inside Ethan's much larger one. It was the first time Leo had shown such trust with a man. "He has your smile," Ethan murmured, watching Leo laugh while chasing the squirrel. "And your stubbornness," Sarah replied, sitting on the grass. Yesterday he insisted on having ice cream for dinner and refused to eat anything else for an hour. "Did you cave?" "Of course not." Sarah smiled. "But I gave him strawberries with a little whipped cream, which is technically almost ice cream." Ethan laughed. "Smart, both of you." Leo ran back toward them, stumbled slightly, and instead of seeking Sarah, he reached his arms out to Ethan. Without hesitation, Ethan lifted him and hugged him close. "Careful, little brave one," he said. Leo snuggled against Ethan for a few moments, and Sarah saw Ethan's eyes fill with unconcealed emotion. It was the first time he had held his son, and the moment clearly moved him deeply. "Can I ask you a question?" Ethan still held Leo, who was now playing with his jacket zipper. "Was it hard? The pregnancy, the birth, everything?" Sarah looked at the lake. "The first few months were terrible. Constant nausea, exhaustion, and trying to keep my studio afloat." She paused. "But when he was born, I've never felt anything like it. Terrifying and wonderful at the same time." "Were you alone?" "My mother came from Miami. She stayed with me for the first few weeks." Sarah smiled tenderly. Leo has her completely wrapped around his finger. When he visits, he convinces her that breakfast can be cookies. Ethan imagined Sarah during those days, strong, determined, facing motherhood alone because he had been too proud to fight for them. The guilt hit him like a wave. "I regret not being there," he said softly. "You didn't know, but I should have known. I should have fought harder for us. I shouldn't have let you go so easily." Leo chose that moment to babble something that sounded like Papa while looking at Ethan. Both adults froze. "He's been saying it a lot lately," Sarah quickly explained. "I don't think he knows what it really means." But when Leo repeated Papa, looking directly at Ethan, Sarah realized her son might understand more than she thought. The afternoon was getting chilly, and Leo started to show signs of tiredness. Ethan helped buckle him into the stroller. "Can we do this again?" Ethan asked as they walked toward the park exit. "Sure, but slowly, Ethan. He's just getting to know you." "I understand." Ethan looked at Leo, who had fallen asleep. "But I want to be present. I want to be the father he deserves." Sarah studied his face. The sincerity was undeniable, but she also knew how impulsive Ethan could be. "Wednesday night. Can you have dinner with us at home? Nothing fancy, just pasta and veggies." Ethan's heart quickened. It was a small but significant step. "I'll be there." The confession of a coward on Wednesday night. Ethan arrived at Sarah's Lincoln Park apartment with sweaty palms and a bouquet of pink peonies, Sarah's favorite flowers, which he remembered perfectly. He also brought a simple but sturdy toy truck for Leo. Sarah opened the door wearing jeans and a light blue cotton t-shirt, barefoot, with her hair in a messy bun. She had flour on her left cheek and smelled of garlic and basil. She had never looked more beautiful. "You're just in time," she said, taking the flowers with a genuine smile. "Leo is my kitchen helper, which means everything is taking twice as long." The apartment was exactly as Ethan had imagined, clean and modern, but full of life. Colorful toys mixed with architecture books, and the walls were decorated with Leo's crayon drawings, alongside photos of her most successful projects. Leo ran out from the kitchen, wearing a tiny dinosaur apron. Seeing Ethan, he paused, then ran toward him with open arms. "Ethan!" he shouted, and Ethan's heart melted. "Hi, champ." Ethan lifted him and handed him the truck. "This is for you." Leo examined the toy seriously, making rolling engine sounds. "He likes cars," Sarah explained, wiping her hands. "Especially big ones. Every time he sees a construction site, he's fascinated by the machines, just like his mother with the buildings." Ethan smiled. "And like his father with business, I suppose." They ate homemade pasta with tomato sauce and roasted vegetables. Leo insisted on sitting between them, and Ethan discovered that feeding an 18-month-old was an entirely new experience. Leo had clear opinions on what, and in what order he wanted to eat. After dinner, while Sarah bathed Leo, Ethan washed the dishes, a simple, domestic act that gave him a sense of belonging he hadn't experienced in years. When Sarah came out of the bathroom with Leo in his pajamas, the boy went straight to Ethan, who was sitting on the sofa. "Story?" Leo asked with limited but clear vocabulary. "He wants you to read him a story," Sarah translated. "It's part of his nighttime routine." Ethan froze. "Me? If you want." Leo climbed onto the sofa and snuggled against Ethan, holding a worn book about an adventurous bunny. Ethan began to read, altering his voice for the characters, and soon Leo was completely absorbed. Halfway through, Leo fell asleep against Ethan's chest. Sarah approached to take him, but Ethan stopped her. "Can I carry him to his room?" Sarah nodded, leading him to a small, cozy room decorated with painted clouds on the ceiling and glow-in-the-dark stars. Ethan placed Leo in his crib with a delicacy that surprised Sarah, adjusting the blue blanket and whispering, "Good night, little one." Back in the living room, they sat on the sofa with a glass of red wine. The apartment was silent, except for the soft sound of rain that had begun to fall over Chicago. "Thank you," Ethan finally said, "for this, for letting me be part of his routine." "It was easier than I thought," Sarah admitted. "Leo seems comfortable with you. And you?" The question hung in the air. Sarah swirled her wine, studying the liquid. "I'm confused," she finally confessed. "For 2.5 years, I built my life without you. I learned to be a single mother, to handle everything alone, and now you're here, and it's like..." She stopped. "It's like you never left. Like we are a normal family having dinner on a Wednesday night. And that scares me." Ethan moved closer. "It scares me too, but maybe it doesn't have to. Ethan, Sarah began, but he interrupted her gently. There's something you need to know about why I left that night. Ethan took a deep breath. My father called that afternoon. My mother was in the hospital. She had had a heart attack. I was terrified of losing her. Sarah was still. He had never told her this. I wanted you to come to New York with me, but you had that big presentation the next day, the project you'd been preparing for months. When you said you couldn't cancel it, I felt alone. I thought your career would always be more important than us. Why didn't you ever tell me about your mother? Because I was hurt, and because I was too proud to admit I needed you. Ethan looked directly at her. My mother recovered completely, but our relationship didn't, and it has been the biggest mistake of my life. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. If I had known about your mother, I would have canceled everything. I always would have. We were so young, she murmured. And so stupid, Ethan added. But we're not 20 anymore, Sarah. We can get it right this time. The rain continued to fall softly, and in the next room, Leo slept soundly, surrounded by the love of both parents for the first time in his young life. The spot 3 weeks after that intimate dinner, Ethan had established a routine. Wednesdays were dinner with Sarah and Leo. Saturdays were for the park or the zoo, and some weekday afternoons, he simply stopped by to check on them. Leo had started calling him Papa consistently, and Ethan felt he was finally building the family he never knew he wanted. Sarah, meanwhile, fought feelings she thought were buried forever. Seeing Ethan with Leo, the infinite patience, the way he memorized the boys' favorite songs, was melting the defenses she had so carefully built. That Thursday morning, Sarah was reviewing blueprints for a sustainable residential complex when her assistant, Chloe, walked in with a worried look. Sarah, there's someone here who insists on seeing you. He says it's urgent and concerns Ethan Blackwood. Sarah frowned. Who is it? His name is Victor Rossi. He says he's Ethan's business partner. The name didn't ring a bell, but something in Chloe's expression unsettled her. Send him in. Victor Rossi entered with the confidence of someone used to getting his way. He was a man in his 40s, sharply dressed, with perfectly combed silver-gray hair and cold gray eyes that evaluated Sarah's office as if appraising its value. Ms. Jenkins, he said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Thank you for seeing me without an appointment. How can I help you, Mr. Rossi? Victor sat down uninvited, crossing his legs with calculated elegance. I am Ethan's partner in several real estate ventures. We've worked together for years, building his empire, and I'm concerned about his recent distraction. Victor smiled again, and this time Sarah saw something predatory in his expression. You see, Ethan has been canceling important meetings, postponing crucial decisions, all since you and your son reappeared. Sarah felt a chill. I don't see how that is my concern. Oh, but it is. Victor leaned forward. Ethan is committed to several multi-million-dollar projects that require his full attention. His new family responsibilities are jeopardizing investments from many very important people. Am I being threatened? Absolutely not. Victor raised his hands in a gesture of false innocence. I'm just being pragmatic. You are an intelligent, successful woman. You must understand that Ethan cannot have it all. Your world and his are incompatible. Sarah stood up, rage building in her chest. I believe this conversation is over. Wait. Victor pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph. It was Ethan in the park with Leo, obviously taken without their knowledge. It would be a shame if someone leaked to the press that the magnate Ethan Blackwood has a secret child, especially after his highly publicized breakup with Victoria Hayes. The threat was crystal clear. Sarah felt sick. What exactly do you want? That you walk away. Let Ethan focus on his empire. In exchange, I'll ensure you and your son have everything you need. A bigger house, private school for the boy, a trust fund. Victor stood up, smoothing his jacket. You just have to disappear from his life. Again. When Victor left, Sarah was trembling with anger and fear. She canceled all her appointments. She needed to think. That afternoon, when Ethan arrived for his usual visit, he found Sarah distant and tense. Leo was playing with his blocks, unaware of the storm brewing. What's wrong? Ethan sat next to her. Sarah wrestled with herself before telling him about Victor's visit. As she spoke, she saw Ethan's face darken. Son of a bitch, Ethan muttered. He was my partner in some projects, but I never gave him total access. He's been trying to gain more control for months. Is it true? What he said about the projects being at risk? Ethan ran his hands through his hair, the old stress signal. There are some important projects, yes, but nothing to justify his threats. Ethan. Sarah looked him straight in the eye. Maybe he's right. Maybe our worlds are too different. No. Ethan took her hands in his. You are not going to let that manipulator drive us apart again. But what if it's not just him? What if we really can't make it work? Sarah's voice cracked slightly. I've been through this once, Ethan. I don't know if I can do it again. Leo, sensing the tension, climbed onto Sarah's lap, hugging her tightly. Mama's sad, he said in his worried little voice. Ethan's heart broke. He had found his family, and now someone was trying to destroy it again. I promise I will fix this, he told Sarah, gently stroking Leo's hair. Victor will not win. But that night, as Ethan drove back to his hotel, his phone rang. It was Victor. I hope you've talked to your little family about my proposal, Ethan, his cold voice said. Stay away from them, Victor. Oh, Ethan, this is just starting. Tomorrow, photographers will be tracking your dear Sarah's every move. Are you sure you want to expose your son to that media circus? The line went dead, and Ethan sat there, feeling the world he had just begun to rebuild crumble in his hands, taking control of the narrative. Sarah woke at 6 a.m. to the sound of voices outside. From her bedroom window, she could see 3 vans with TV equipment parked outside her building. Men with professional cameras waited on the sidewalk. Her phone had been ringing all night. 23 missed calls from unknown numbers, all journalists seeking a statement about Ethan Blackwood's secret son. Leo was still asleep, unaware of the media circus on their quiet Lincoln Park street. Sarah quickly dressed and called her mother. Mom, I need you to come to Chicago, now. What happened, sweetie? It's complicated. I'll explain when you get here. Can you come? Her mother, Helen Jenkins, arrived from Miami in 3 hours. An elegant, practical woman who had raised Sarah alone after her father left. She entered through the building's back door. My God, Sarah, what have you done? She asked after her daughter explained the situation. What have I done? I let my son's father meet him. Helen looked out at the cameras. And now you're on every news channel in the country. Indeed, the story had exploded. Ethan Blackwood's secret son, the architect who conquered the magnate. Forbidden love in power circles. Sensational headlines multiplied online on every hour. Meanwhile, at Blackwood Construction headquarters in New York, Ethan faced an emergency meeting. The boardroom was tense. Stocks are down 3 cents this morning, reported his financial director, Mark Davies. Investors are nervous about the scandal. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. Having a child is a scandal? Having one in secret is, intervened Victor from the end of the table, his smile barely concealed satisfaction. Especially when you just broke a highly publicized engagement. Ethan glared at him. Did you orchestrate this? I only protect our interests. Victor shrugged. The projects in LA and San Francisco are at risk. The foreign investors are not happy with this negative publicity. Then maybe we should reconsider our partnership. Ethan stood up. That would be a very costly mistake. Victor smiled coldly. I have signed contracts, Ethan. You can't get rid of me that easily. Back in Chicago, Sarah tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy for Leo, but it was impossible. He didn't understand why they couldn't go to the park, why there were so many people with cameras outside, why Mama was so tense. At 2 in the afternoon, Ethan showed up at the back door. He wore sunglasses and a cap, but Sarah could see the dark circles under his eyes. "How did you get in?" "I came up through the next building's garage and jumped the rooftops." Ethan took off his cap, running a hand through his messy hair, just like the old days. Despite everything, Sarah smiled. Leo ran toward Ethan with open arms. "Papa!" The word resonated in the apartment with an innocent joy that brutally contrasted with the chaos outside. "Hello, champ." Ethan lifted him, hugging him tight. Helen, who had been watching from the kitchen, finally approached. "So, you're Ethan," she said, studying him with the assessing gaze only mothers can perfect. "Mrs. Jenkins." Ethan rose respectfully, extending his hand. "I regret that we meet under these circumstances." Helen shook his hand, her expression severe. "My daughter suffered a lot when you left." "You're right," Ethan said, looking directly at Helen. "I made terrible mistakes, but now I want to fix them." "How? By dragging my daughter and grandson into a media circus?" "I didn't do this." Ethan ran his hands over his face. "It was my partner, but I'm taking care of it. And in the meantime, Sarah and Leo have to live like prisoners?" Sarah's phone rang. It was Chloe. "Sarah, they canceled the meeting for the Sustainable Housing Project. The client says he doesn't want to be associated with media controversy." When she hung up, Sarah sank into a chair. "This is going to ruin my career." Ethan knelt in front of her. "I won't let that happen. How are you going to stop it? It's already happening." "I have an idea." Ethan took her hands. "But you're going to have to trust me." Sarah looked into his eyes. There it was again, asking her to trust him. Just like 5 years ago, when their relationship was a whirlwind of passion and broken promises. "What idea?" "We're going to give them the story they actually want." Ethan smiled, but there was iron determination in his eyes. "We're going to control the narrative before it controls us." The final proposal. 2 days later, Ethan had meticulously organized everything. He hired New York's top public relations team, booked the main ballroom at the Four Seasons Chicago, and sent exclusive invitations to the country's most respected media outlets. It wouldn't be a media circus. It would be a declaration. Sarah looked in the mirror, adjusting the navy dress she had chosen. Elegant but maternal. Professional but accessible. Her hands trembled slightly as she put on her grandmother's pearl earrings. "Are you sure about this?" her mother asked, holding Leo, who wore a small gray suit Ethan had specially commissioned for him. "No," Sarah confessed, "but I trust Ethan." At 4:30 p.m., Ethan arrived with his security team. He wore an impeccable dark gray suit and a blue tie Sarah recognized, the one she had given him for his birthday 5 years ago. "Ready, champ?" Ethan took Leo into his arms. The boy, unaware of the moment's importance, played with his father's tie. "Papa handsome," Leo said, and both Ethan and Sarah smiled despite their nerves. At the Four Seasons, the room was packed. Journalists from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and all major networks waited. In the front row, Sarah recognized Victor Rossi, who had arrived uninvited and watched with a confident smirk. Ethan took the podium with Sarah by his side and Leo in his arms. The cameras flashed like fireworks. "Good afternoon," Ethan began, his voice firm and clear. "My name is Ethan Blackwood, and this is Sarah Jenkins, the most extraordinary woman I have ever met, and our son, Leo." The room went silent. Sarah felt her heart pounding. 2.5 years ago, due to my pride and immaturity, I lost the family I cared for most in the world. Sarah was pregnant, but I was too much of a coward, and too stupid, to fight for our love. Victor frowned. This was not what he expected. Stories have appeared recently about a secret child and hidden relationships. I want to clarify. There are no secrets here. Only a man who made the biggest mistake of his life and has had the incredible fortune of receiving a second chance. Ethan turned to Sarah, taking her free hand. Sarah doesn't need my money. She has built one of the most respected sustainable architecture studios in the country through her own merit. She doesn't need my social status. She has raised our son with a strength and grace that humbles me every day. And she definitely doesn't need the media circus that has surrounded her this week. The room was completely silent. Leo chose that moment to babble mama and touch Sarah's face, eliciting a collective awe from the reporters. What Sarah deserves, Ethan continued, is respect. For her work, for her independence, for the incredible job she has done as a single mother. And what our son deserves is privacy to grow up without being chased by photographers. Ethan paused, looking directly at the cameras. As of today, any media outlet that publishes unauthorized photos of my family, harasses Sarah at her job, or invades my son's privacy will face the full legal consequences from my lawyers. And believe me, they are very good at what they do. Victor stood up in his seat, clearly agitated. Finally, Ethan smiled, and for the first time since he started, he looked completely relaxed. I want to do this the right way this time, to the surprise of everyone, especially Sarah. Ethan stepped off the podium and knelt in front of her. He pulled a small blue velvet box from his pocket. "Sarah Jenkins," he said, his voice now trembling with emotion. "You are the smartest, strongest, most incredible woman I have ever known. You are an extraordinary mother and a brilliant professional. I am not asking you to complete me, because you are already complete by yourself." Tears began to stream down Sarah's cheeks. "I am asking you to allow me to join you, to build the family we always should have been, together. Will you marry me?" The room erupted in murmurs and camera flashes. Leo clapped, not understanding what was happening, but clearly enjoying the attention. Sarah looked at the ring. It was perfect, simple yet elegant, exactly her style. Then she looked at Ethan, kneeling before her, vulnerable and awestruck in a way she had never seen before. "Yes," she whispered, and then louder, "Yes, I will marry you." Ethan stood and kissed her, as Leo clapped between them, and the photographers captured what would be the front pages of every newspaper the next day. In the front row, Victor stood up abruptly and headed for the exit. His plan had failed spectacularly. Ethan hadn't just controlled the narrative, he had completely rewritten it. A foundation built on truth. After the conference, as the three returned to the apartment in a tinted window limousine, Leo fell asleep between his parents. "How did you know I would say yes?" Sarah asked, admiring her engagement ring. "I didn't," Ethan confessed. "But I knew that if I didn't try, I would regret it for the rest of my life." "Next time?" Sarah smiled. "Maybe you could ask me without 100 cameras watching." "Next time?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Well," Sarah snuggled against him, "we have a lifetime to practice doing things right." The story continues through the sabotage and ultimate defeat of Victor Rossi, the cleansing of Sarah's reputation, and a flash forward to 5 years later, where they now have a second child, Ella. 5 years later, the architecture of true love. The spring sun of Chicago streamed softly through the windows of the penthouse Ethan and Sarah had designed together in the Gold Coast neighborhood. It was a perfect blend of both their tastes. Clean, modern lines Sarah loved, combined with touches of warmth and luxury that reflected Ethan's personality. Sarah, now 31, with her light brown hair cut into an elegant bob, was in the kitchen making pancakes, singing softly to their children. Yes, children. Plural. Leo, now 6, ran in, dressed in his school uniform. Gray pants, white shirt, and a blue tie that was completely askew. He still had his father's bright green eyes, but now they held his mother's curious intensity. "Mom, where's Dad?" he asked, climbing onto a chair to reach the orange juice. In his study, finishing an important call. Do you have your backpack ready? Yes, but I can't find my renewable energy project. Sarah smiled. Her son had inherited her passion for sustainability. A soft cry came from the baby monitor. Can you tell Dad that Ella woke up? Ella Blackwood Jenkins was 8 months old, a perfect mix of her parents, with Ethan's dark, curly hair and Sarah's expressive brown eyes. Ethan appeared a few minutes later, wearing a white shirt with sleeves rolled up and dark trousers. At 37, he had a few new lines around his eyes, but he still had the peace she hadn't seen in his younger self. He carried Ella, who played with his tie. Good morning, beautiful. He kissed Sarah's forehead, then her lips. Did you sleep well? Until this little one decided 5 a.m. was the perfect time to play. Sarah smiled, but I don't mind. Ethan had been there for every night waking, every diaper change, every tired moment. Dad! Leo ran over. Are you coming to my presentation today? Wouldn't miss it for the world, champ. Ethan ruffled his son's hair. Are you nervous? A little, but Mom helped me practice. Later that evening, after putting the children to bed, Ethan and Sarah sat on their terrace, overlooking the sparkling city. Do you remember that night in my old apartment? Sarah asked, snuggling against Ethan. When you said we wanted different things. I was an idiot, Ethan replied instantly. No, you weren't. You were partly right. We did want different things. Sarah looked at him. But it turns out you can want different things and still build something beautiful together. Ethan kissed her hair, breathing in the familiar scent of her jasmine shampoo. Are you happy? Truly happy, not just content? You know what's crazy? Sarah confessed. I thought I was happy when I was a single mother. I thought I was happy building my career alone. And I was, in a way. But this? Sarah gestured toward the quiet house where their 2 children slept. This isn't just happiness. It's wholeness. It's knowing that if everything fell apart tomorrow, I would have everything I need. They sat there for hours, talking about future projects, about Leo's dreams, about how Ella would probably be as stubborn as both of them. When they finally went inside, Ethan checked on the children one last time. Leo slept with his science book open beside him, and Ella's small fist was clenched around a stuffed animal. You know I love you, he whispered to Sarah as they got into bed. Every day for 5 years, she replied. It wasn't a complaint. It was a celebration, the meaningful ending. Some love stories are fireworks. They burn brightly and fade away. Others are like solid architecture, built slowly, with deep foundations, and designed to last a lifetime. Can true love survive our past mistakes and build something even more beautiful the second time around? Thank you for watching. If you loved this story of second chances, make sure to subscribe and comment below, telling us what you thought. Your support means the world to us.